In June of 1902, the Army Corps of Engineers began dredging operations along a 6-mile section of the Sacramento River near Folsom, California. The project was routine sediment removal, channel deepening, standard riverine maintenance that had become common practice across American waterways. On the morning of June 18th, at approximately 7:30, the dredge operator named James Whitmore initiated the mechanical arm into the riverbed at a location marked as Grid Reference 40, 2.3 on the official Corps survey maps. What emerged from the bottom, still dripping river sediment, was a stone structure measuring exactly 7 feet in length, 3 feet in width, and weighing approximately 840 pounds. It was geometrically perfect. It was not supposed to be there. Within 48 hours, James Whitmore was transferred to a posting in the Oregon Territory. The official transfer documentation lists no reason. The structure was logged in preliminary reports and then systematically removed from every subsequent record the Army Corps of Engineers produced. What remains today is a single-mentioned 6 lines buried in a warehouse outside Sacramento containing the original survey documents from that dredging season. It was found, quite by accident, in 1987 by a graduate student named Margaret Chen, who was conducting research on Sacramento River engineering history. The mention reads as follows. June 18, 1902, item recovered near marker 42.3, stone construction. Dimensions recorded. Item transferred to custody per directive. No further notation required. That is the entire official acknowledgement of what Whitmore and his team brought up from the riverbed that morning. The photograph that might have documented it, the sketches that would have shown its proportions, the measurement notes that would have verified its specifications, none of these materials have ever been located. They were either destroyed or filed into a category of records that has never been made public. But James Whitmore kept a personal journal. His daughter, Eleanor Whitmore, donated his papers to the Bancroft Library at UC Berkeley in 1956. In that journal, dated June 18, 1902, Whitmore wrote the following, brought up stonework this morning at marker 42.3. Perfect rectangle. Carved edges. Weight exceeds 800 pounds. Command arrived within 2 hours of recovery. Photos confiscated. Officers took measurements I was not permitted to observe. Colonel instructed all personnel to record nothing further. Told us the item would be transported under military escort. When asked its origin, Colonel said nothing. Transferred. Orders arrived this afternoon. Posted to Oregon. No explanation offered. Asked why. Told transferal is effective immediately. Do not ask questions regarding river work. This is what the transfer means. The question that must be asked is foundational. Why does the Army Corps of Engineers confiscate equipment, photographs and official documentation to remove traces of a stone construction found at a precise depth in a specific location? Why does an officer arrive within 2 hours of an accidental discovery? Why is the only witness transferred 72 hours later with explicit instructions not to ask questions? Why does the federal government in 1902 have protocols in place for exactly this scenario? The answer requires understanding what the Sacramento River was in 1902 and what the Army Corps of Engineers was searching for along its depths. Between 1848 and 1865, the Sacramento River became the primary waterway for moving wealth from California's interior. Gold had been discovered in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The river was the highway that carried it downstream. By 1870, the quantity of sediment moving downriver had become so severe that navigation became increasingly hazardous. The Army Corps of Engineers was tasked with clearing and deepening the channel to facilitate commercial transport. This is publicly documented. What is less commonly known is that by 1895, the Corps had begun conducting deep surveys along the entire Sacramento corridor. These were not routine depth measurements. They were conducted using specialized equipment that extended well beyond standard dredging operations. The surveys lasted 3 years. They produced mapping data that was classified almost immediately. Congress asked for copies. The Army Corps refused to provide them, citing strategic navigation interest. The wording is significant. Strategic implies military concern. Navigation interest could mean commercial navigation. Together, the phrase suggests something was being sought. In 1898, the Corps dredging operations shifted focus. Previous work had targeted the river's main channel. New operations began in secondary channels, oxbow formations, and areas where water flow had been historically diverted. The work became more intensive. Specialized crews were rotated in from Corps facilities in other states, men with experience in deep excavation, men trained in documentation protocols, men accustomed to secrecy. Local workers were replaced. The river began to be treated not as a natural waterway requiring maintenance, but as an archaeological site requiring security. Then came June 18, 1902. The team working near Folsom was led by Whitmore, but the operation was supervised by a colonel whose name appears in official records only as C. Harrison, Army Corps of Engineers, Sacramento Division. No full first name is recorded. No subsequent assignment for this officer has been located. The dredge arm brought up the stone structure at exactly the location where the 1895 to 1897 surveys had indicated something anomalous below the standard riverbed level. This was not an accidental recovery. This was the culmination of a 3-year search. The structure had been known to be there. The dredging operation had been specifically designed to retrieve it. The stone structure itself bears description based on Whitmore's private journal entries. He measured it at 7 feet in length, 3 feet in width. The height is noted as 18 inches. The weight exceeded 800 pounds, which suggests density comparable to granite or limestone. The edges, as Whitmore notes, were carved rather than naturally weathered or fractured. The interior remained sealed. He saw no opening, no seam, no indication of how the structure's interior could be accessed. Most significantly, Whitmore noted that the exterior bore markings. These were not natural striations. They were deliberate patterns, though he was unable to record them fully before the structure was removed. He wrote, markings on the top surface. 3 parallel lines, each running the length of the structure, spacing approximately 4 inches between each line. The lines are not carved deep, but sufficiently defined that no river action could have created them. They appear intentional. They appear to indicate something. What appears in Whitmore's journal does not appear in any Army Corps document. The Corps record states only that an item was recovered, transferred, and catalogued per directive. The directive itself has never been located. The location where the structure was transferred to has never been publicly disclosed. No institution, museum, or federal repository contains any record of what happened to it after June 18, 1902. It disappeared into an administrative void with the precision of something that the government had prepared years in advance to make disappear. The pattern of preparation suggests institutional knowledge. The 3-year survey operation, the replacement of local workers with Corps personnel, the presence of a command officer within 2 hours of recovery, the immediate confiscation of documentation, the transfer of the only witness with explicit instructions regarding silence. These actions indicate a protocol. Someone, somewhere within the Army Corps of Engineers hierarchy, knew exactly what might be found in the Sacramento River and had established a chain of command to handle it when discovery occurred. The specificity of Whitmore's transfer is the smoking element. He was not promoted elsewhere, not reassigned to another dredging operation, not given a choice of posting. He was transferred to the Oregon Territory, the furthest possible distance that would keep him within the continental United States. He remained there until his retirement in 1919. He never again worked on river survey operations. He never again worked for the Army Corps of Engineers in any capacity that involved direct reporting. He was isolated. The institutional suppression becomes clearer when examined against the timeline of geological knowledge in 1902. By that year, American archaeology was advancing rapidly. The Smithsonian Institution, founded in 1846, had become the repository for significant archaeological finds. Universities were beginning to develop formal archaeology programs. If a structure of authentic archaeological significance had been discovered in the Sacramento River, something predating European settlement, something with carved markings and geometric precision, the scientific response would have been immediate. Universities would have sent teams. The Smithsonian would have made claims of custody. Professional archaeologists would have demanded access to document and analyze the findings. The discovery would have become public within months. Instead, nothing, no archaeological community response, no institutional claim to the artifact, no scientific inquiry. The discovery was met with military confiscation and witness isolation. This response pattern indicates something the government did not want examined by professional archaeologists or exposed to scientific scrutiny. The structure was not confiscated because it was valuable. It was confiscated because it was problematic. What the structure actually was remains entirely unknown. The journal entries note only what Whitmore could observe directly: dimensions, material, weight, the presence of deliberate markings, the geometric precision of construction. No other records exist that might clarify purpose or origin. No photographs have ever surfaced. No measurements have been independently verified. The object exists now only as a recorded fact in Whitmore's private journal and as a 6-line acknowledgement in a warehouse document that most researchers have never located. The Army Corps of Engineers has never commented on the recovery. When researchers have submitted Freedom of Information Act requests specifically asking for records related to the June 1902 Sacramento dredging operations, they receive standard responses: no records exist beyond the published river survey data, and any preliminary notes have been archived in standard facilities. None of these researchers have ever successfully located those archives. What remains tangible today is the location itself. The marker 42.3 that Whitmore references corresponds to a specific geographic position along the Sacramento River near Folsom. The channel has been dredged repeatedly since 1902, deepened, widened, and engineered according to subsequent water management projects. The exact position where the structure was recovered has been altered by subsequent operations, but the general area remains a documented location. In 1987, when Margaret Chen discovered Whitmore's reference in the warehouse documents, she attempted to locate additional information. She submitted inquiries to the Army Corps of Engineers office in Sacramento asking for full copies of the 1895 to 1897 survey data. The request was formally denied. The surveys, she was told, contained notations regarding strategic navigation interests and could not be released in their entirety. A redacted version was offered. Chen examined it. Approximately 60% of the original survey was redacted. The redacted sections corresponded primarily to locations within a 12-mile radius of the Folsom dredging site. The human cost of the suppression is present in Whitmore's life trajectory. A man who had been promoted steadily through the Corps, who had supervisory responsibilities, who had demonstrated competence and reliability, was suddenly removed from advancement. His remaining career was spent in positions of administrative work, documentation tasks, useful positions, but permanently removed from decision-making authority. He had seen something he was not supposed to see, and survived by accepting permanent professional exile. His family knew why he had been transferred, but he never spoke publicly about the river work. His daughter Eleanor kept his journals but apparently never attempted to publicize them while he was alive. She donated them to Berkeley only after his death in 1955. By 1987, when Chen discovered them, Whitmore had been dead for 32 years. The transfer had occurred 85 years prior. The person responsible had never been identified. The structure had never been explained. The physical remains of this incident consist of exactly 3 elements: Whitmore's personal journal, preserved in the Bancroft Library, a 6-line notation in an Army Corps warehouse document discovered in 1987, and the river location itself, now deeply altered by subsequent engineering. The journal entries are straightforward and contain no embellishment or speculation. Whitmore was documenting what he directly observed. The warehouse notation is bureaucratic language designed to acknowledge receipt and prevent further inquiry. Neither document, taken alone, proves anything extraordinary occurred. Taken together, they indicate systematic removal of information from public record. The location, photographed repeatedly since 1902, shows no obvious marker or indication of historical significance. Whatever was buried there in the modern era has since been altered or obscured. The history itself remains visible only to those who search for it deliberately. What questions remain are these? What was recovered on June 18, 1902? Why did the Army Corps of Engineers maintain a 3-year search operation to locate it specifically? Why did the government remove all traces of the discovery from public record? What was so fundamentally problematic about a carved stone structure in the Sacramento River that it required military confiscation and the permanent professional exile of the only witness? The stone itself is gone. The photographs are gone. The measurements are redacted from public archives. The officer in charge disappeared into obscurity. The only evidence that anything unusual occurred is a man's handwriting in a journal, preserved by accident because his daughter chose to donate his papers to a library. The structure is no longer in the Sacramento River. The location where it rested is now 50 feet deeper than it was in 1902, altered by decades of subsequent dredging and channelization. If anyone knows what the object was, if anyone maintains records of where it was taken, if anyone understands why its discovery was considered significant enough to warrant federal suppression, that information has not been made public. The silence has held for 122 years, and that silence, more than the object itself, is what remains most difficult to explain.